Good day. We are back again. We're going to talk about LO, continuing with LO1, and we are moving into video number 8. Today we're going to look at the Kraljic matrix, the Pittock-Kraljic matrix. Yes, the Pittock-Kraljic matrix. And what this matrix would be about. This matrix will help us better understand the purpose of relationships within a supply chain, and it will also help us understand the importance of rationalizing your relationships and rationalizing your supply chain as a whole. You will recognize that several relationships are required in order to carry out your supply chain duties. So let's not waste any time. So I'm look at my pointer, and I'm going to start with the matrix here, the main focus. Now, the matrix has 4 quadrants, which is expected: leverage items, strategic items, non-critical items, and bottleneck items. Now, let's start with the 2 very easy ones: bottleneck, or maybe non-critical items. So, non-critical items, you see where supply risk is low and profit impact is also low. What does that say? So from a buyer's perspective or a supply chain manager's perspective, they would have items of that nature, low value items, like some consumables, might be rivets, O-rings, very cheap O-rings, those low value items. Now usually for low value items, the supply risk is low. And why we say supply risk is low? Supply risk being low means that it will not be difficult to acquire. It will not be difficult to acquire those items. You have leverage. There are likely to be many suppliers in the market, many. Now, in terms of profit impact being low as well, it is hardly likely that the non-availability of these items will affect the operation significantly. So it will not go to the root of the operation, affecting the operation to the point where there's major disruption. So profit impact would be low. But let's compare that with the strategic quadrant, strategic items. And let's look at a bigger organization, let's say like an airline. So an airline, when you look at an airline's inventory, you'll see capital equipment, those expensive rotable spares like, for example, landing gear and engines and so on, the power plant. Those items, in terms of supply risk, is very high. Why is it very high? It is high because getting an alternative supplier is, in most cases, not possible. Many a times, you end up in a monopoly type situation. For example, Rolls-Royce. If you have aircrafts with Rolls-Royce engines, then only Rolls-Royce engines will go under the aircraft, if the aircraft is configured for Rolls-Royce engines. If the aircraft is configured for GE engines or Pratt & Whitney engines, then only those items will be fitted on, only those engines from those suppliers. Now, profit impact. Aircrafts don't make money unless they are flying. So if there are problems, some disruption with your engine supplier, and there's an aircraft on the ground, it is sure to affect your profit. So it will impact on your profitability. So profit impact high, supply risk also high. Strategic items. Now, let's get to the relationship side. It is recommended that for this, or that within this matrix, within this quadrant, you should maintain a collaborative relationship, right? So the Kraljic matrix helps us understand the importance of relationships, but not having close relationships with everyone, but with the strategic suppliers. And this is where the rationalizing comes in. So if we had to compare it with non-critical items where you have leverage, extensive leverage, there is no need to have a collaborative relationship. Your relationship can be arm's length because you have leverage. There are many suppliers. So you can easily move from one to the other, but you do not have that facility for strategic items. Where, as I just mentioned, for strategic items, usually you only have a few suppliers in the market, sometimes or in many times, one supplier who can supply that item. Now, so I've discussed both more or less, and I'll highlight briefly leverage items and bottleneck. So bottleneck, supply risk high, profit impact low. You're probably thinking, how could that be? So there are items at times in an organization that may not be expensive, but they might be unique. And only one supplier or one contractor or one workshop somewhere, only one workshop would be able to repair that item in the way you want it repaired. Or they might be the only specialist supplier. Now again, it might not be a high value item, but they might be the only ones who can customize an item or a product based on your requirement. So any fallouts, it can affect your business. Now, profit impact low, and there's a reason for that. So the profit impact being low because it may not, if you don't have this item, it's hardly likely that it will affect your operation significantly. All right. So items with limited source of supplies maintain good relationship with existing suppliers and actively develop new niche suppliers. All right. But being in a bottleneck quadrant is not a nice place to be, and we are advised to slowly find ourselves out of that quadrant. Maybe you may have to make it yourself, all right, or learn to make it yourself, because this is, you may have specialist suppliers in there. Not that it will affect your operation in terms of profit impact, but in the long term, if the disruptions continue, it will affect it. So I move to the final one quickly. Leverage items. Profit impact high. Supply risk low. Standard commodities with abundant source of supplies utilize purchasing power. So in these items, in terms of supply risk, there are many suppliers in the market. So your supply risk is low. Profit impact being high. Why? Why is profit impact high there? It is an important lesson that not because you have leverage in a market, it might mean in the long term or at any given time, profit impact will not be a problem. For example, if there's a major shortage of a particular raw material that many of those suppliers use, right? Where in that leverage quadrant we're looking at, if there's a particular shortage, then it can threaten your supply chain. It will definitely threaten your supply chain because something like, let's say, tissue paper. Tissue paper, an important consumable at an airline or at an office, a large building, can affect the operation of the company. It will. You cannot function without a consumable like tissue paper, which is cheap, yes, which is easy to get at any time. But if you don't have it, it can affect the business, all right? So, in a nutshell, that is the Kraljic matrix, what we call the Pittock Kraljic matrix. This matrix, again, helps us understand the importance of rationalizing our supply chain and helps us understand the influence of relationships there. We don't apply all relationships or any relationship in any quadrant. For non-strategic, we apply an arm's length type relationship. For the strategic items or the strategic quadrant, we apply a collaborative or partnership type relationship, and we know why. Bottleneck, you should apply a collaborative type relationship there as well. Leverage, I would still say arm's length. You're still safe having an arm's length type relationship there, right? Unless things change as they go along. So thank you very much. The Pittock Kraljic matrix.